Welcome back. Tonight, we return to Camelot. But our journey begins somewhere else. In a land across the sea, where tragedy gives birth to legend. We will meet a child of two worlds, raised beneath enchanted waters, destined to become the greatest knight who ever lived. But greatness and tragedy are often the same story. Let the tale carry you into peaceful rest. Arthur's kingdom has grown strong. The Round Table shines with honor, and knights from distant lands seek to join its fellowship. You remember from our last journey together how Arthur defeated the rebel lords, how he claimed Excalibur from the lake, how he even marched against Rome itself and returned victorious. But this time, we meet the one who will become greater than them all. Not through royal blood or magical destiny, but through skill, courage, and a heart both pure and tormented. His name is Lancelot, and his story begins not in glory, but in fire and grief, in a burning castle far across the sea. Chapter 1: The Child of Two Worlds. Part 1: Fire and Loss. The flames could be seen for miles across the French countryside. King Ben's castle, that proud fortress that had stood for generations, burned like a torch against the night sky. Orange and red fingers of fire clawed upward, sending sparks spinning into the darkness like dying stars. King Ben of Benwick had been Arthur's faithful ally. When the young king fought to unite Britain, Ben had sent knights and gold to aid him. They had been brothers in all but blood, their friendship forged in the heat of battle and sealed with oaths spoken over wine and firelight. But Ben had enemies of his own. While he rode north to help Arthur one final time, his rival, King Claudas, struck. The attack came swift and merciless. Ben's knights, too few in number, fought bravely but fell one by one. By the time Ben received word and raced back toward his homeland, it was already too late. Now he stood at the forest's edge, his wife Elaine beside him, their infant son wrapped in her arms. Behind them, a single loyal knight held the reins of their exhausted horses. Before them, across a valley still green with spring grass, their castle died in flames. Ben was not a young man anymore. His beard had gone gray in Arthur's service, his shoulders bent under the weight of too many battles. As he watched his home collapse, stone by ancient stone, something broke inside him. Not his courage, for he had faced death 100 times without flinching. Something deeper. Something in the very core of what made him who he was. "My kingdom," he whispered. "Everything gone." His hand clutched at his chest. Elaine turned to him, saw his face go pale as winter snow. "Ben? My love." He fell. Not like a warrior struck down in battle, but like a tree whose roots have finally given way. He collapsed onto the grass, one hand still reaching toward the burning castle, the other pressed against his heart. Elaine screamed. She knelt beside him, still cradling their baby with one arm while trying to support her husband with the other. "No, no, please, Ben, stay with me, please." But King Ben's eyes had already glazed over, fixed on that distant fire. His last breath escaped in a sigh that might have been his castle's name, or his wife's, or simply the sound of everything he had ever loved slipping away from him forever. Queen Elaine held him and wept. Her tears fell onto his still face, onto his cooling hands. The baby in her arms began to cry too, as if sensing that the world had just become a colder, darker place. The loyal knight dismounted, uncertain what to do. The baby's wails grew louder. Elaine, her mind fracturing with grief, gently laid the infant on the grass a few feet away and returned to cradle her dead husband's body. She rocked him like a child, murmuring words of love and loss, her voice breaking over and over. That is when the air changed. A mist rose from nowhere, though the night was clear. It rolled across the grass like something alive, something aware. The knight stepped back, his hand moving to his sword. Elaine, lost in her grief, did not notice. But she noticed when the baby's crying stopped. Her head snapped up. The child? Where? She turned, and her words died in her throat. Where there had been empty grassland moments before, there was now a lake. Not a small pond, but a vast expanse of water, its surface smooth as polished glass, reflecting the stars with impossible clarity. And upon that water, as if the laws of nature meant nothing, stood a woman. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look upon. Not the beauty of youth, though she appeared young, but the beauty of ancient things, of moonlight on snow, of the first morning of the world. Her gown seemed woven from mist and starlight. Her hair fell in waves of silver and gold. And in her arms, quiet now and staring up at her with wide eyes, was the baby. The Lady of the Lake, the same enchantress who had given Arthur his sword, the guardian of mysteries older than human memory. My baby. Elaine struggled to her feet, but her legs would not carry her. Give me back my son. The lady's voice came like wind through distant trees, soft yet carrying perfectly across the water. Peace, Queen Elaine. I mean the child no harm. I have watched this night unfold. I have seen your husband's heart break and fail. I have seen your world crumble to ash. Then you know I have nothing left. Elaine's voice cracked. Nothing but him. Please. He is all I have. The lady looked down at the infant in her arms. The baby had stopped crying entirely now, reaching up with tiny fingers toward her luminous face. This child is destined for greatness beyond anything you can imagine. But that destiny cannot unfold here, in this broken world of men and their petty wars. Let me take him. Let me raise him in my realm beneath the waters, where time moves differently, where magic still flows pure and strong. No. Elaine shook her head frantically. No. I cannot. He is my son. My only son. He is your son, the lady agreed, her voice gentle as falling snow. But he is also something more. Look at him, Elaine. Truly look. And Elaine did. Through her tears, she saw her baby son gazing at the lady with eyes too aware, too knowing for an infant. She saw the way the starlight seemed to gather around him, the way the very air shimmered in his presence. What? What is he? He is the bridge between worlds, the lady said. Born of human love and loss, but marked by destiny for a purpose greater than kingdoms. I cannot tell you all that he will become, but I can promise you this. In my care, he will grow strong and wise and good. He will become the finest knight the world has ever known. His name will be legend when your husband's castle is dust and even Arthur's Camelot is nothing but memory and song. Elaine looked at her husband's body, still warm but growing cold. She looked at the distant flames consuming everything she had known. She looked at her son, so small and helpless in the enchantress's arms. What choice did she really have? She was alone now, penniless, with enemies hunting her. She could barely protect herself, let alone raise a child. And yet he was her baby, the last piece of the man she loved. Will I? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Will I ever see him again? The lady's expression softened with something that might have been compassion. When his destiny calls him to the world of men, he will return. But by then, he will be grown, a stranger to you, though your blood runs in his veins. Elaine closed her eyes. Tears streamed down her face. When she opened them again, she had made her choice. The choice of a mother who loves more than she fears, who gives more than she keeps. His name, she whispered. His name is Lancelot. The lady nodded slowly. Lancelot. Yes. A good name. A strong name. Promise me, Elaine said, her voice steadier now. Promise me you will tell him. Tell him his father was brave. Tell him his mother loved him. Tell him. I will tell him, the lady said softly. I promise. And then, like morning fog burned away by sun, the lake began to fade. The lady stepped backward onto the water, and with each step, she descended, sinking slowly beneath the surface. The baby. Lancelot gazed back at his mother one last time. Then the waters closed over them both, and they were gone. The grass was dry again, as if no lake had ever been there. Elaine fell to her knees and wept until she had no tears left. The loyal knight stood guard over her and the body of his king until dawn broke gray and cold over the ruins of everything they had known. But beneath the waters, in a realm beyond mortal sight, a child's new life was just beginning. Part 2, Beneath the Waves. The kingdom beneath the lake existed in a place between places, a pocket of ancient magic preserved from the world's forgetting. Here, time moved like honey, slow and golden. A year in the world above might be merely a season below, or a season might stretch into years. Time was a river that bent and curved according to the lady's will. The palace was built of crystal and pearl, its towers reaching up toward the surface far above, where sunlight filtered down in dancing columns of green and gold. Gardens grew in the courtyards, but these were not flowers of earth and soil. These blooms were made of living light, their petals humming with soft music, their scent like memory itself. Here, the lady raised Lancelot as her own. She was not cruel, nor was she overly tender. She taught him as the ancient ones teach, with patience measured in centuries, with lessons laid like pearls around grains of truth. She told him stories of the world above, of knights and kings, of honor and sacrifice. She taught him that strength without wisdom was mere brutality, and wisdom without courage was mere philosophy. By the time Lancelot could walk, he was learning to hold a wooden sword. The lady summoned creatures of living water to spar with him, their forms shifting and flowing, teaching him to adapt, to read an opponent's intentions before the blow ever fell. He learned that fighting was not about anger or force, but about understanding, about harmony between body and mind. As he grew older, the lessons deepened. He studied languages, not just the French and Latin of his mortal heritage, but older tongues, the speech of wind and water, the grammar of starlight. He learned music, how a single note could carry more meaning than 1,000 words. He learned the arts of courtly life, how to move with grace, how to speak with courtesy even to those who deserved none. But always, he returned to the sword. By his 10th year, no water spirit in the lady's realm could best him. By his 15th, he could fight blindfolded, reading his opponent's movements through the displacement of air, the whisper of breath, the subtle shift of weight on stone. He was beautiful, this boy growing into manhood. Tall and lean, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes that held the depth of the lake itself. There was something otherworldly about him, a quality that marked him as not quite human, not quite fey, but something suspended between. The lady watched him grow with satisfaction tinged with sorrow. She knew what awaited him in the world above. She had seen it in the patterns of ripples on water, in the arrangement of stars reflected on the lake's surface. Glory, yes. Greatness beyond measure. But also pain. Also loss. Also a love that would destroy kingdoms. But she said nothing. Destiny cannot be taught. It can only be lived. On the morning of his 18th birthday, though he did not know it was his birthday, for time meant little in this realm, the lady summoned him to the highest tower of the Crystal Palace. Lancelot, she said, and her voice held a weight it had never carried before. Come. Look. She gestured toward a pool of water, perfectly still, set into the floor of the tower. He knelt beside it and gazed down, His own reflection looked back at him, but then the image rippled and changed. He saw a castle rising from green hills. Walls of white stone, towers flying bright banners. Knights in gleaming armor rode through gates of oak and iron. In a great hall, men sat around a table with no head, where all sat as equals. Camelot, the lady said softly. The kingdom of Arthur Pendragon, the once and future king. This is where your destiny lies. Lancelot stared at the vision, his heart beating faster. All his life, he had trained for something, though he had never quite known what. Now, seeing this castle, these knights, he understood. This was home, or it would be. When? He asked simply. Now, the lady replied. Your time here has ended. Your time there begins. She led him to a chamber he had never entered before. There, laid out on a table of white marble, was a suit of armor. Not the plain practice armor he had worn in training, but true knight's armor. Polished to a mirror shine, every piece perfectly fitted to his frame though he had never been measured for it. Silver for the moon that watches over you, the lady said. White for the purity of purpose you must strive to maintain. Put it on. He dressed slowly, reverently. The armor fit as if it were part of his own skin. When he looked at himself in the mirror of polished crystal, he saw not a boy anymore, but a knight. The knight he was meant to become. The lady buckled the sword around his waist. The blade was simple, elegant, perfectly balanced. This is not Excalibur, she said. That sword has its own destiny. But this blade will serve you well, until perhaps you find another meant for you alone. She stepped back and regarded him in silence for a long moment. There is something you should know, she said at last, about who you are, where you came from. And she told him about King Ban and Queen Elaine, about the burning castle and the broken heart, about the choice a mother made on the worst night of her life. Lancelot listened without speaking. When she finished, he closed his eyes briefly, processing this revelation. He had always known, somehow, that he did not fully belong to this underwater realm. Now he understood why. Is she still alive? He asked quietly. My mother. I do not know, the lady answered honestly. The world above is not kind to widowed queens. But if she lives, perhaps one day you will find her. He nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. For everything. The lady's expression, usually so serene and unreadable, softened. She reached out and touched his cheek, a gesture almost maternal. You have been like a son to me, Lancelot of the Lake. Go now, and become what you were meant to be. The greatest knight the world has ever known. I will make you proud, he said. I know, she replied. But remember this, greatness comes with a price. The higher you rise, the farther there is to fall. Guard your heart, Lancelot. It is both your greatest strength and your deepest weakness. She led him to the edge of the lake, to a place where the water met the shore in the world above. The surface gleamed above them like a silver mirror. "Go," she said, "and may you find what you seek. Though I fear you may find more than you bargained for." Lancelot did not understand her warning then. He would. All too soon. He stepped forward and rose, breaking through the surface of the water into the warm sunlight of a spring morning. Behind him, the lake lay calm and still, giving no hint of the wonders hidden in its depths. Before him, the road to Camelot stretched inviting and wide. He mounted the white horse that waited there, as if it had always been meant for him. He did not look back. Looking back was for those who doubted. Lancelot had no doubts. Not yet. Chapter 2, The Journey to Camelot. Part 1, First Sight of the Shining City. The journey took 3 days of riding through the green heart of Britain. Lancelot traveled alone, as was fitting for a knight seeking to prove himself. The roads were safer now than they had been before Arthur's reign, but still dangerous enough that a lone rider needed to stay alert. He encountered few people at first. A shepherd driving his flock across a hillside, who stared at the silver-armored knight as if seeing a vision. A merchant with a cartload of wool, who warned him of bandits in the forest ahead. A monk traveling to a monastery, who blessed him and asked his name. "Lancelot," he said. It felt strange to speak his name aloud to someone who was not the lady. "Lancelot du Lac." The monk's eyes widened slightly. "Of the lake? Are you blessed by her, then? The lady? I was raised by her." Lancelot answered simply. The monk made a sign against evil, then caught himself and looked embarrassed. "Forgive me. I meant no offense. It's just, the old magic and the new faith, they don't always sit comfortably together." Lancelot smiled gently. "The lady taught me that wisdom wears many faces. I see no conflict between your God and her mysteries. Perhaps they are different words for the same truth." The monk looked at him with new respect. "You speak like a scholar, not a warrior. Cannot a man be both?" In these times, the monk said thoughtfully, "Perhaps he must be." "God keep you, Sir Lancelot of the Lake. I think you are bound for great things." On the afternoon of the third day, Lancelot crested a hill. And there before him, nestled in a valley with a river curving around it like a lover's arm, was Camelot. The sight took his breath away. The castle rose white and proud against the blue sky, its towers reaching upward as if trying to touch heaven itself. Banners flew from every peak, red and gold, snapping in the spring wind. The river sparkled like scattered diamonds in the sunlight. Around the castle, a town had grown, prosperous and bustling, its streets alive with people and commerce. But it was more than the physical beauty that struck him. There was something in the air itself, some quality of hope, of possibility, of dreams made manifest. This was more than a kingdom. This was an idea made real. The idea that honor could triumph over might, that justice could be more than a word, that perhaps, just perhaps, there could be a better way for men to live. Lancelot urged his horse forward, his heart beating faster with each step. He had trained for this his entire life, though he had not known it. Now, at last, he was here. At the place where his true life would begin. As he rode down the hill toward the town, people stopped to stare at him. Children pointed at his silver armor. Women whispered behind their hands. Men nodded with respect, recognizing the bearing of a true knight even if they did not know his name. He rode through the town gates, past market stalls selling everything from fresh bread to fine cloth, past blacksmiths and carpenters and merchants calling their wares. The smell of roasting meat mingled with the scent of flowers from window boxes. Somewhere, someone was playing a lute, the music drifting cheerfully through the warm air. At last, he reached the castle gates. Guards stood watch, seasoned warriors who assessed him with professional eyes. "State your business," one of them said, not unkindly. "I am Lancelot du Lac," he said, his voice steady despite the nervousness fluttering in his chest. "I have come to seek audience with King Arthur. I wish to serve him, if he will have me." The guards exchanged glances. Another one, the second guard muttered, but without malice. "Knights come from all over, seeking to join the round table. What makes you different?" The first guard asked. Lancelot met his eyes calmly. "Nothing. Perhaps. Or everything. That is for the king to decide. Not for me to claim." The guard grunted, but something in Lancelot's manner seemed to satisfy him. "It happens that the king is holding court today. It's Pentecost, a feast day. If you're lucky, you might be granted a moment of his time. Though I warn you, the hall will be crowded." "I will take my chances," Lancelot said. The guard nodded and stepped aside. "Stable your horse in the courtyard. Someone will show you to the great hall." Lancelot dismounted and led his horse through the gates. His hands, he noticed, were trembling slightly. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. Everything he had trained for, everything the lady had prepared him for, came down to this moment. He would enter that hall, kneel before Arthur Pendragon, and offer his sword in service. It should have been simple. But destiny, as he would soon discover, is never simple. Part 2: The Fatal Glance. A servant led him through corridors of stone and timber, past tapestries depicting great battles and noble deeds. The sounds of celebration grew louder with each step. Music, laughter, the clink of goblets, the rumble of many voices in conversation. Then the servant pushed open a set of massive oak doors, and Lancelot stepped into the great hall of Camelot. It was more magnificent than anything he had seen in the lady's visions. The hall stretched vast before him, its ceiling lost in shadows crossed by heavy oak beams. Torches blazed in iron brackets along the walls. Shields and banners hung everywhere, each representing a knight or a noble house. The air was thick with the smell of roasted meat, fresh bread, wine, and the peculiar scent of many people gathered in one place. Sweat and perfume, leather and wool. And there, in the center of the hall, was the round table itself. It was enormous, carved from a single massive piece of oak. Its surface polished until it gleamed like dark water. Around it sat the knights. Perhaps 30 of them, each with a goblet before him, each wearing fine clothes or armor depending on his preference. No man sat at the head, for there was no head. All were equal here, as Arthur had decreed. But Lancelot barely registered any of this in that first moment. His eyes found Arthur immediately, as if drawn by magnetism. The king sat among his knights, distinguishable not by position but by presence. He was younger than Lancelot had expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with a beard of dark gold and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He wore a simple circlet of gold on his head. An Excalibur hung at his side, its pommel visible, glowing faintly with its own inner light. Arthur was speaking with the knight beside him, gesturing animatedly, laughing at something the man had said. There was no ceremony in his manner, no distance. He sat with his knights as a brother, not as a ruler perched above them. And then Lancelot's gaze moved, almost against his will, to the woman seated at Arthur's right hand. Time fractured. That is the only way to describe it. The noise of the hall faded to a distant murmur. The torchlight seemed to soften and blur. The very air became thick, dreamlike. She wore a gown of deep crimson, embroidered with gold thread that caught the light with every breath. Her hair was dark as a raven's wing, falling in intricate braids woven with pearls. Her skin had the warmth of honey and sunlight, but it was her face that held him captive. Not because it was flawless, though it was beautiful, but because there was intelligence in it, and kindness, and something sat around the eyes, as if she carried a grief she had learned to wear gracefully. Queen Guinevere. Even as his mind formed her name, she turned. Perhaps she felt his stare. Perhaps it was merely chance. But she turned, and her eyes met his across the crowded hall. Her lips parted slightly. A breath caught, suspended between one heartbeat and the next. What passed between them in that moment was not love. Not yet. It was something older. Something that existed before words were invented to name it. Recognition. As if two souls, wandering separate through all of time, had finally found each other and thought, "At last, at last. There you are." Lancelot felt his heart lurch in his chest like a bird striking a window. The armor that had never felt heavy before suddenly pressed against him. His mouth went dry. The sword at his hip seemed to pull him down, as if reminding him of oaths not yet sworn but already binding. He knew, in that instant, in that terrible, wonderful instant, that his life had just changed forever. That he had just made a choice without choosing. That he had just walked into a trap of his own heart's making. And worse, far worse, he saw the same knowledge reflected in her eyes. The same recognition. The same helpless understanding that something irreversible had just occurred. She looked away first, breaking the connection like a thread pulled too taut finally snapping. She turned back to Arthur, said something Lancelot could not hear. But he saw her hand tremble as she lifted her goblet to her lips. "You, there." A voice cut through his daze, Silver Knight. State your name and business. Lancelot blinked, returning to himself. The hall rushed back to full volume and color. An older knight had stood from the table. A large man with gray in his beard and a scar across one cheek. "Forgive me," Lancelot said, finding his voice. He was amazed it did not shake. "I am Lancelot du Lac. I come seeking audience with King Arthur." The hall quieted. All eyes turned to him now. He felt their assessment, their curiosity, their skepticism. Arthur stood. Up close. He was even more impressive. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the easy confidence of a man who had earned his power rather than inherited it. "Lancelot of the Lake," Arthur said thoughtfully. His voice was warm, tinged with genuine interest. "I have heard that title before. The lady who gave me Excalibur spoke once of a child she had taken into her keeping. Is that you?" "It is, my lord," Lancelot said. He knelt, as was proper, though his legs felt uncertain beneath him. He kept his eyes fixed on Arthur, afraid that if he looked at Guinevere again, he would be lost entirely. "Stand," Arthur said kindly. "Rise, and tell me what brings you to Camelot." Lancelot stood. "I wish to serve you, my lord. I offer you my sword, my skill, and my loyalty. I ask nothing in return, save the honor of joining your fellowship." A murmur ran through the hall. Some approving, some skeptical. The scarred knight who had spoken first crossed his arms. "Pretty words," he said, not unkindly. "But we've heard pretty words before. The Round Table is not for those who merely wish to be knights. It is for those who have proven themselves worthy." "Sir Kay speaks truth," Arthur said, though perhaps more bluntly than necessary. A few knights chuckled. Kay scowled but said nothing more. Arthur studied Lancelot with thoughtful eyes. "The Lady of the Lake has never steered me wrong. If she raised you, I believe you have potential. But potential is not the same as proven worth. How say you, Lancelot? Are you prepared to demonstrate your abilities?" "I am, my lord," Lancelot said steadily. "However you wish to test me, I am ready." Arthur smiled. "Good. Then you shall have your chance. But for now, it is a feast day. Join us. Eat, drink, rest from your journey. Tomorrow, we shall see what you are made of." A servant hurried forward to show Lancelot to a seat. But before he moved, he made the mistake he had been trying so desperately to avoid. He looked at Guinevere. She was watching him. When their eyes met this time, she did not look away immediately. For just a heartbeat, 2 heartbeats, they stared at each other with an intensity that should have set the very air between them aflame. Then she dropped her gaze to her plate, her cheeks flushing faintly. And Arthur, who missed nothing, glanced between them, a small furrow appearing between his brows. But it passed quickly, and he returned to his conversation with the knight beside him. Lancelot followed the servant to his seat, his mind reeling. He had been in Camelot for less than an hour, and already he had committed the greatest betrayal possible. He had fallen in love with his king's wife. Chapter 3: Proving Worth. Part 1: The Challenge. That night, in the small chamber assigned to him in the castle, Lancelot did not sleep. He lay on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows shift and dance in the light of a single candle. What had he done? Nothing. Technically. He had looked at a woman. That was all. Men looked at beautiful women every day. It meant nothing. Except it had not been nothing. He knew it. She knew it. And if they both knew it, how long before others knew it too? Before Arthur knew it? Arthur, who had welcomed him with warmth and trust. Arthur, who had smiled at him like a friend. Who had offered him a chance to prove himself worthy of the Round Table. Lancelot pressed his hands over his face. "What have you done?" He whispered to the darkness. The darkness, as usual, had no answers. By dawn, he had made a resolution. He would bury these feelings. He would transform them into something else. Devotion to duty, loyalty to Arthur, dedication to the ideals of knighthood. He would serve the king so faithfully, so completely, that there would be no room in his heart for anything else. He would become the perfect knight. When morning light finally crept through the narrow window, he rose and dressed carefully. He polished his armor until it gleamed. He sharpened his sword, though it needed no sharpening. He prepared himself, body and mind, for whatever test Arthur would set before him. A knock at the door announced a servant with bread and ale for breakfast. "The king requests your presence in the courtyard," the boy said, "when you've finished eating." Lancelot ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Then he made his way down through the castle, following the sounds of voices and activity. The courtyard was already crowded when he arrived. It seemed half the castle had turned out to watch the new knight's trial. Knights of the Round Table stood in clusters, discussing what they had heard about this stranger raised by fairies. Servants and soldiers lined the walls. Even some townspeople had been allowed in to witness the spectacle. And there, standing beside Arthur on a raised platform, was Guinevere. Lancelot's carefully constructed resolution wavered for just a moment. She wore a gown of pale blue today, her hair braided back from her face. She looked serene, regal, every inch the queen. But when her eyes found him in the crowd, he saw the same conflict he felt reflected in their depths. He looked away. He had to. Arthur stepped forward, raising a hand for silence. The crowd quieted immediately. "Friends," the king said, his voice carrying easily across the courtyard. "Yesterday, a knight came to us seeking to join our fellowship. He claims to have been raised by the Lady of the Lake herself, trained in the arts of combat and courtesy. These are impressive claims." Some of the knights chuckled. Kay, standing with arms crossed, looked openly skeptical. "But claims alone do not make a knight of the Round Table." Arthur continued, "We must see proof. Therefore, I have arranged a simple test. Sir Lancelot, are you prepared?" "I am, my lord," Lancelot said, stepping forward. "Good." Arthur gestured to the center of the courtyard, where servants were setting up a quintin, a rotating target used for practice jousting. "Your first test is skill at arms. You will face the quintin, then demonstrate your swordsmanship against one of my knights. If you acquit yourself well, we shall proceed to other matters." It was, as Arthur had said, a simple test. Basic. Any knight worth his spurs should be able to pass it easily. Lancelot nodded. "As you command, my lord." A servant brought forth a lance. Lancelot took it, testing its weight and balance. It was well made, sturdy but not too heavy. He mounted his horse, which had been brought from the stables, and rode to the far end of the courtyard. The crowd watched in silence. Even the skeptical knights had stopped their conversations, curious to see what this silver-armored stranger could do. Lancelot closed his eyes for just a moment. He heard the lady's voice in his memory. Fighting is not about anger or force, but about understanding, about harmony between body and mind. He opened his eyes, focused on the quintin, and spurred his horse forward. What happened next took perhaps 5 seconds, though to those watching it seemed to unfold both quickly and in perfect, crystalline clarity. Lancelot rode as if he and the horse were one being. His posture was perfect, his lance steady. At the exact moment of impact, he struck the quintin's target dead center. The wooden arm spun violently, as it was designed to do, trying to strike an inattentive rider from behind. But Lancelot was already past it, guiding his horse in a smooth curve. The quintin's arm whistled harmlessly through empty air. He rode back to the starting position, dismounted, and handed the lance to the waiting servant. His expression remained calm, modest, as if he had done nothing remarkable. The crowd erupted in applause. Even Kay, the skeptic, was nodding with grudging approval. Arthur smiled broadly. "Well struck. I have rarely seen better. Now then, for the sword. Sir Gawain, would you do the honors?" A tall knight with red gold hair stepped forward, grinning. Gawain was Arthur's nephew, one of the most formidable warriors of the Round Table, known for his strength and courage. "With pleasure, uncle," Gawain said. He drew his sword and moved to the center of the courtyard. "Come then, lake child. Let's see if your Fey teachers taught you anything useful." There was no malice in his words, only the friendly challenge of one warrior to another. Lancelot drew his own blade and approached. The two knights circled each other slowly, each taking the other's measure. Then Gawain attacked. A powerful overhand strike that would have felled an ox if it had connected. Lancelot's sword rose to meet it, deflecting the blow with minimal effort. The blades rang out, a clear, pure note that echoed off the courtyard walls. They exchanged a flurry of strikes, Gawain pressing forward with the aggression of a summer storm. Lancelot giving ground but never losing his balance, never showing strain. Then, so quickly that most of the watchers missed it, Lancelot shifted his weight, redirected Gawain's next strike, and tapped the flat of his blade against Gawain's exposed side. A touch, nothing more, but in a real fight it would have been a killing blow. Gawain stopped, breathing hard, and laughed in delight. By God! Did you see that? I didn't even see it coming. He sheathed his sword and clapped Lancelot on the shoulder. You're the real thing, Lake Child. I've never been bested so quickly, not even by Uncle Arthur here. The courtyard erupted in cheers and applause. Knights were shouting approval, servants were whistling, and the townspeople were clapping with enthusiasm. Arthur descended from the platform, still smiling. I am satisfied, he announced. More than satisfied. Sir Lancelot, you have proven your worth. It would be my honor to name you a Knight of the Round Table, if you will accept. Lancelot knelt, his heart pounding. This was the moment he had trained for his entire life. The moment that should have been pure joy. And it was joy. It was. But it was also fear. Because as he knelt before Arthur, he could feel Guinevere's eyes upon him. And he knew that in gaining everything he had ever wanted, he had also set himself on a path toward losing it all. I accept, my lord, he said quietly. And I swear to serve you faithfully all the days of my life. Arthur touched Excalibur to Lancelot's shoulders, left and right. Then rise, Sir Lancelot du Lac, Knight of the Round Table. Chapter 4, Bonds Forged and Tested. Part 1, Brothers in Arms. The days that followed were among the happiest of Lancelot's life, and also the most difficult. He was given a place at the Round Table. His shield hung among the others in the Great Hall. The other knights, after their initial skepticism had been overcome by his demonstration of skill, welcomed him warmly. Gawain became a particular friend, often seeking him out for practice bouts or simply for conversation over ale in the evening. You know, Gawain said one evening, as they sat together watching the sun set from the castle walls, when you first arrived, I thought you'd be like the others. The pretty ones who think a silver sword and a famous teacher make them knights. And now? Lancelot asked with a slight smile. Now I think you might be the best of us, Gawain said simply. Don't let it go to your head. Mind you. But I've seen you fight, and I've watched how you carry yourself. You've got something the rest of us are still trying to learn. What's that? Humility, Gawain said. Real humility, not false modesty. You know you're good, but you don't need everyone else to know it. That's rare. Lancelot was quiet for a moment. The lady taught me that pride is a weight that slows the sword arm, he said finally, and that true strength needs no announcement. Gawain nodded thoughtfully. Wise woman, this lady of yours. I wish I'd had such a teacher. But it was Arthur's friendship that meant the most to Lancelot, and also troubled him the deepest. The king seemed drawn to him, seeking his company in ways that both honored and pained the young knight. They rode together, hunted together, discussed strategy and philosophy late into the night. Arthur was unlike any man Lancelot had ever known. Brilliant but not arrogant. Powerful but not cruel. Idealistic but not naive. You understand? Arthur said to him once. as they walked together through the castle gardens. What I'm trying to build here? It's not just a kingdom. Kingdoms come and go. I want something more lasting. An idea. A vision of how men could live if they chose honor over power, justice over vengeance, brotherhood over rivalry. I understand, my lord, Lancelot said. It's why I came here. It's what the lady told me to seek. Arthur stopped walking and turned to face him. I want you to be part of it, Lancelot. Not just as another knight, but as something more. A brother. My right hand. The living embodiment of what the Round Table stands for. Lancelot felt those words like a dagger to the heart. My lord, I am not worthy of such honor. That's exactly why you are worthy, Arthur said with a gentle smile. The ones who think themselves deserving of such things rarely are. But you, Lancelot, I see it in you. A purity of purpose. A dedication to ideals. You could be the greatest of us all. He placed a hand on Lancelot's shoulder, a gesture of friendship and trust. I'm glad you came to Camelot, my friend. I feel as though I've been waiting for you without knowing it. After Arthur left, Lancelot remained in the garden, staring at a rose bush without seeing it. The greatest of us all, Arthur's right hand, his brother. And all the while, this terrible secret burning in his heart like a coal he could neither hold nor release. He tried to avoid Guinevere. He truly did. When he saw her approaching in a corridor, he would find a reason to turn down another hall. When she entered the great hall, he would focus his attention entirely on his conversation with whoever sat beside him. When she spoke at the table, he would listen without looking at her, as if eye contact alone would betray him. But Camelot was not large enough for such avoidance to last forever. 2 weeks after his arrival, he encountered her in the castle library. He had gone there seeking a particular book on battle tactics that Arthur had recommended. The room was quiet, filled with the smell of old parchment and leather bindings. Afternoon sunlight streamed through high windows, painting everything in shades of honey and gold. He thought he was alone. He was wrong. Sir Lancelot. Her voice, soft and careful, made him freeze. He turned slowly, and there she was, emerging from between two tall shelves, a book clutched in her hands. They stared at each other. The sunlight caught in her hair, made her skin glow warm. She wore a simple gown today, green like new leaves, with no jewelry except a single ring on her finger. Arthur's ring. Your Majesty, Lancelot said, bowing stiffly. Forgive me. I did not mean to intrude. You're not intruding, she said. This library belongs to all who live in Camelot. She paused, then added quietly, though I confess, I often come here to be alone. Then I will leave you to your solitude, he said, and turned toward the door. Wait. He stopped but did not turn back to face her. Please, she said. We cannot go on like this. Avoiding each other. Pretending we don't see each other. It's ridiculous. And worse, it's noticeable. that made him turn. Noticeable? Do you think people are blind? There was no accusation in her voice, only a kind of weary honesty. A new night arrives. He and the queen cannot meet each other's eyes. They leave rooms when the other enters. What do you suppose people will think? Lancelot felt cold dread settle in his stomach. They will think exactly what is true. Which is? She asked softly. He met her eyes fully for the first time since that moment in the great hall. That I am a fool and a traitor. That I have betrayed my king's trust, before I have even properly earned it. That I... He stopped, unable to continue. That you feel something you should not feel. Guinevere finished quietly. Yes. I understand. Because I feel it too. The admission hung between them like smoke, like mist, like something fragile and dangerous. We cannot, Lancelot said, and his voice was rough with emotion. We must not. I know, Guinevere said. Believe me, I know. Arthur is. He is good. He loves me, and I care for him. Our marriage was arranged, yes, but we have built something real from it. He deserves better than this. Than us. Then we agree, Lancelot said. We will bury this. We will be cordial, courteous, nothing more. We will serve Arthur, both of us, with all our hearts. Yes, Guinevere said, but her voice trembled slightly. They stood there, two people trying desperately to choose duty over desire, honor over heart. I should go, Lancelot said finally. Yes. Guinevere agreed. You should. But neither of them moved. Finally, with an effort that seemed to cost him physically, Lancelot turned and walked to the door. He paused there, his hand on the frame. I will be the best knight Arthur has ever known, he said without looking back. I will serve him so faithfully that there will be no room in my life for anything else. Not even this. I believe you will try, Guinevere said softly. I will try too. He left her there, surrounded by books and sunlight and the weight of things that could never be. Part 2, The Quest begins. 3 days later, a noblewoman arrived at Camelot seeking aid. Her lands were being terrorized by a cruel knight, who had taken her castle by force and imprisoned any who dared resist him. Arthur brought the matter before the Round Table. Who will take up this lady's cause? He asked. Several knights offered, but Lancelot was fastest. I will go, my lord, he said, if you deem me worthy of the quest. Arthur smiled. I can think of no one more worthy. But the road is dangerous, and this knight she speaks of, Sir Turquine, is said to be fierce and strong. Perhaps you should not go alone. I'll go with him, Kay said, surprising everyone. The seneschal had been one of Lancelot's most vocal skeptics. Someone should make sure our new knight doesn't get himself killed on his first real quest. And so it was arranged. The next morning, Lancelot and Kay rode out from Camelot together. their armor gleaming in the early sun. The lady whose lands needed defending rode with them, along with a small escort. As they passed through the castle gates, Lancelot glanced back. Just once. He saw Guinevere standing at a window high above, watching them depart. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Then he turned forward and did not look back again. The journey would take 3 days through forests and over hills. Kay, despite his gruff exterior, proved to be good company. He told stories of Arthur's early days, of battles fought and won, of the chaos before Camelot brought order to Britain. "You're wondering why I volunteered to come with you," Kay said on the second day, as they made camp beneath a spreading oak. "The thought had crossed my mind," Lancelot admitted. Kay poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward into the darkness. "I didn't trust you at first," he said bluntly. "Thought you were too good to be true. Too perfect. Too polished. Figured you had to be hiding something. And now? Now I think you're exactly what you appear to be," Kay said. "Which is almost more troubling, in a way. Men like you make the rest of us look bad by comparison." He said it lightly, but there was something serious beneath the jest. "I am not perfect, Sir Kay," Lancelot said quietly. "Far from it." "None of us are," Kay agreed. "But some of us are better at hiding our flaws than others." He looked at Lancelot across the fire. "Whatever demons you're running from, Lake Child, I hope this quest helps you outrun them." Lancelot said nothing. What could he say? That he was running from his own heart? That he hoped if he rode far enough, fought hard enough, proved himself thoroughly enough, he could somehow transform this impossible love into something manageable? On the third day, they encountered trouble. 3 knights in dark armor ambushed them on a forest path. They attacked without warning or challenge, which marked them as thieves rather than true knights. Kay engaged 2 of them while Lancelot faced the third. It was over in moments. Lancelot's blade moved like quicksilver, precise and unstoppable. The attacking knight's sword was knocked from his hand, and a moment later he was on the ground, yielding. But Kay was not faring as well. One of his opponents had managed to wound him, a deep cut to his arm. He was faltering, his defense weakening. Lancelot turned, saw Kay in danger, and moved. What happened next would be spoken of in Camelot for years afterward. Lancelot crossed the distance between himself and Kay's attackers in 3 long strides. His sword seemed to be everywhere at once, deflecting blows, finding gaps in armor, forcing both knights back and back until they too yielded and fled into the forest. Kay sat down heavily, clutching his wounded arm. "God's teeth," he muttered. "I've never seen anyone move like that." Lancelot knelt beside him, examining the wound. "It's deep but clean. We should bind it." As he wrapped Kay's arm with strips of cloth torn from his own tunic, Kay watched him with new respect. "Arthur was right about you," he said. "You might actually be the best of us." "I doubt that," Lancelot said. "I don't," Kay replied simply. And so Lancelot rode onward, toward the fortress of Sir Turquine, toward his first true test as a knight of the Round Table. Behind him lay Camelot, and in Camelot, a woman he could not have and a king he must not betray. Before him lay the path of honor, of duty, of becoming the knight he had sworn to be. He would succeed in this quest. He would defeat Turquine and rescue those imprisoned. He would return to Camelot covered in glory, proven beyond all doubt. He would become the greatest knight in the world. And perhaps, he told himself as he rode beneath the forest canopy, perhaps that would be enough. Perhaps the glory would fill the emptiness. Perhaps the honor would ease the ache. Perhaps. But deep in his heart, in the place where truth lives beyond the reach of noble intentions and well-meant vows, he already knew it would not be enough. Nothing would ever be enough, except the one thing he could never, ever allow himself to have. Such is the curse of the perfect knight, to want what he cannot take, to love what he must not claim, to carry a secret that grows heavier with each passing day, until the weight of it bends him, breaks him, or transforms him into something new. Lancelot did not know yet which it would be. But his story was only beginning. And like all great stories, it would demand more from him than he ever imagined he could give. This concludes the third tale from the age of Camelot. We have met the greatest knight, watched him rise from enchanted waters to Arthur's court, witnessed the moment when destiny and desire collided in his heart. Next time, we will follow his quest against Sir Turquine, learn of other knights who joined the Round Table, and watch as the bonds of friendship between Arthur and Lancelot deepen. Even as the secret between Lancelot and Guinevere grows more dangerous with each passing day. Until then, let these ancient stories carry you gently into rest. Let the rhythm of hoofbeats on ancient roads, the whisper of enchanted waters, and the quiet ache of impossible love lull you into peaceful sleep. Good night from Tranquilla Healing Studio. May your dreams be as deep as the Lady's Lake. And as peaceful as the moment before dawn.